today. As I said, I think as a supporter of rural broadband development, I want to see programs that work and are effective. This one has some serious questions about it, and that is the substance of my amendment. In the interest of moving this process along, Mr. Speaker, I will complete those comments and reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves his time. Who seeks time in opposition to the amendment? Gentleman from Kentucky.
We reserve the balance.
Does the gentleman from Kentucky seek time in opposition to the amendment?
I do not.
Okay.
Do not seek time.
The gentleman from Washington seeks time in opposition
Do
to
I
the
have to really be in opposition?
The gentleman from Washington will get the time by unanimous consent.
I
Gentleman is
ask
recognized
unanimous
for 5 minutes.
I ask unanimous consent for 5 minutes.
Okay.
Gentleman from Washington is recognized.
I'm done, Norm. Yeah,
I yield back my time.
The gentleman from Washington yields back his time. The gentleman from Utah yields back his time. The questions on the amendment is offered by the gentleman from Utah. All those in favor signify so by saying aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The ayes have it, and the amendment is adopted. For what purpose does the gentleman from Utah seek recognition?
Yes, this is amendment number 496.
Clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 496, printed in the Congressional Record, offered by Mr. Matheson of Utah.
Pursuant to the order of the House of February 17, 2011, the gentleman from Utah, Mr. Matheson, and a member opposed, each will control 5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Utah.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My amendment addresses issues of non-essential travel by federal employees that are not involved in the Departments of Defense or Homeland Security. Simply stated, the amendment says that appropriations made available by this Act are hereby reduced by $600 million for all departments except for Departments of Homeland Security and Department of Defense. I originally was going to do an amendment that specifically talked about reducing non-essential travel, was concerned about a point of order, so this amendment does not specifically mention non-essential travel. However, based on advice of the Fiscal Commission, the travel cuts could be proposed, and both Democrats and Republicans on the Fiscal Commission thought that this was a productive area to look for savings. I decided to structure this amendment in a way that would not be subject to point of order, but its intent is to reduce non-essential travel by federal employees in departments outside of the Department of Defense and the Department of Homeland Security. That is a description of my amendment, and I'm happy to reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Utah reserves his time. Does anyone seek time in opposition to the amendment? Gentleman from Kentucky.
Rise in opposition.
Gentleman's recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, we, in this bill, made it a point of being very careful about the cuts to the DOD and Homeland Security. We think it's the reasonable approach that's in the base bill. We do not need this type of a heavy, deep cut in the defense of the country here and abroad. So I oppose the
I think he's doing all but DOD and Homeland
Security. I'm sorry. Maybe let me make sure I describe. My amendment affects.
I yield to the gentleman.
Yeah, my amendment affects departments other than Defense and Homeland Security. It's only for non-essential employees in other federal departments outside of those two.
An across-the-board cut of the other.
It's a goal across all the other departments, all the other appropriations areas except for Defense and Homeland Security are excluded.
But it's across the board.
That's correct.
I'm in strong opposition to across-the-board cuts. We were elected to make choices. And on this bill, we've made our choices. And we think we've done a fairly decent job of spreading the pain across the board. But to have an across-the-board cut would mean putting our decision-making on automatic pilot, refusing to make decisions, and that's what we were elected to do. So I oppose the gentleman's amendment.
The gentleman reserves the balance of his time.
Reserved.
And again, don't want to prolong this debate.
The gentleman from Utah is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I don't want to prolong this debate. I just want to point out, absent concerns of a point of order, I would have prescriptively said this is specific to do with non-essential travel of federal employees. Due to concerns about a point of order, we structured this amendment where it says it's a cut of $600 million. However, the intent and hopefully the report language when folks in these agencies look at the debate that's taking place right here on the House floor is that it's addressing non-essential travel. And with that, I'll reserve the balance of my time on it.
The gentleman reserves the balance of his time. Does anybody seek time? Yield back. Kentucky. The gentleman yields back his time.
I yield back.
The gentleman from Utah yields back. All time has expired. The questions on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Utah. All those in favor signify so by saying aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it. The amendment is not agreed to. For what purpose does the gentlelady from Washington seek recognition?
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk.
Clerk will designate the amendment.
274.
Amendment number 274, printed in the congressional record, offered by Mrs. McMorris Rodgers of Washington.
Pursuant to the order of the House of February 17th, the gentlelady from Washington, Ms. McMorris Rodgers, and a member opposed, each will control 5 minutes. For what purpose does the gentleman from New York seek recognition?
Mr. Chairman, I reserve a point of order.
The gentleman from New York reserves a point of order. The gentlelady from Washington is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My amendment is simple and complements the amendments offered earlier by my friends Congressman Rehberg and Congresswoman Emerson. This amendment prevents the IRS from using any funds in fiscal year 2011 to pay any employee, contractor, or grantee to enforce the individual mandate, employer mandate, or any other part of the Health Care Reform Act, including tax increases. It didn't take long for the IRS to move in after passage of the Health Care Reform Act to enforce all of these new tax provisions. Indoor tanning services saw taxes rise by 10% within 5 months of the bill's enactment. This year, brand-name drug manufacturers will see their taxes go up. Next year, it's medical devices, and the list goes on. Yet, 2 weeks ago, there was a glimmer of hope. Federal District Judge Roger Vincent became the second federal judge to declare the health care law unconstitutional. But we know these rulings are not enough to keep the administration from moving forward with its takeover of our health care system. In fact, the headlines the day after Judge Vincent's decision read, White House, we won't compromise on the individual mandate. Just this week, the administration proposed to increase the IRS budget by 9% and expects to hire more than 5,100 employees to get the job done. In making its request, the IRS explained that the tax changes associated with the health care reform are huge. Implementation of the Affordable Care Act of 2010 presents a major challenge to the IRS. ACA, the Health Care Reform Act, represents the largest set of tax law changes in more than 20 years, with more than 40 provisions that amend the tax laws. Mr. Chairman, we've been forced to enter into a new era in our health care system, and it's one that's driven by the IRS. The Congressional Budget Office predicted last year that the IRS will need to hire 15,000 new employees and will need at least $10 billion in order to meet its responsibilities under the Act. This is not what Americans expect or deserve. The only way to keep the IRS from intruding into our health care system is to take away its funding. This amendment is a step by prohibiting any funds from being used to hire anyone to enact this bill as we move forward. I urge my colleagues to support individuals and families and our nation's small businesses by supporting this amendment. And I reserve the balance of my time.
Lady reserves the balance of her time. Does the gentleman from New York continue to reserve his point of order?
Mr. Chairman, I insist on my point of order. The amendment proposes a net increase in the budget authority in the bill. The amendment is not in order under Section 3J3 of House Resolution 5 of the 112th Congress, which states, it shall not be in order to consider an amendment to a general appropriations bill proposing a net increase in budget authority in the bill unless considered en bloc with another amendment or amendments proposing an equal or greater decrease in such budget authority pursuant to Clause 2F of Rule 21. The amendment proposes a net increase in budget authority in the bill in violation of such section. I ask for a ruling from the chair.
Does anyone else wish to be heard on the point of order?
Mr. Chairman, I wish to be heard on
the gentlelady from Washington.
Mr. Chairman, my colleague alleges that my amendment would create a net increase in budget authority in the bill, thus giving rise to the point of order. I respectfully disagree for the following reasons. Number one, the challenge provision in this point of order relates to the IRS's ability to ensure small business owners do not take advantage of the limited tax credit that currently exists. This tax credit is already in place. The IRS is already supposedly enforcing this provision. So I do not agree with the conclusion that this amendment, which simply limits the IRS from hiring more employees, would allow abuse of the tax credit. Number two, I would remind my colleagues that last session, during our consideration of U-Cut, CBO indicated that over the next 10 years, the IRS will require between...
Addressing the point of order. It's reiterating the argument.
Chair would like to hear further remarks from the gentlelady from Washington on this point of order.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Number two, CBO has indicated that over the next 10 years, the IRS will require between $5 and $10 billion in funding to implement this law. Number three, just last week, the IRS says it will need at least 1,054 new employees and new facilities at a cost of more than $359 million in fiscal year 2012. 81 workers will be responsible for ensuring that tanning salons pay a new 10% excise tax that went into effect in 2010 and is enforceable in 2011. Total cost, $11.5 million. Mr. Chairman, with the points raised above and the established savings, it is clear that the offsets are not needed and my amendment is in order.
Does anyone else wish to be heard on the point of order?
We'd appreciate a ruling from the chair.
The gentleman from New York makes a point of order that the amendment offered by the gentlewoman from Washington violates Section 3J3 of House Resolution 5. Section 3J3 establishes a point of order against an amendment proposing a net increase in budget authority in the pending bill. The chair has been persuasively guided by an estimate from the chair of the Committee on Budget that the amendment proposes a net increase in budget authority in the bill. Therefore, the point of order is sustained and the amendment is not in order. Purpose does the gentleman from Virginia seek recognition?
Mr. Chairman, I rise to offer an amendment to the continuing resolution for fiscal year 2011.
Clerk will designate the amendment. Would the gentleman kindly specify the number of the amendment that he's proposing?
I think it's number 467.
Clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 467, printed in the Congressional Record, offered by Mr. Goodlatte of Virginia.
Pursuant to the order of the House of February 17, 2011, the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Goodlatte, and a member opposed each will control 5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Virginia.
Mr. Chairman, I yield myself such time as may consume.
Gentleman is recognized.
For the past 2 years, we've seen the administration and the Environmental Protection Agency take overzealous action in the Chesapeake Bay watershed with the potential to dramatically affect jobs, the economy, and local government budgets throughout the 6-state region. The EPA has proposed arbitrary limits on the amounts of nutrients that can enter the Chesapeake Bay and how these nutrients enter the bay. At the same time, the EPA is seeking to expand their regulatory authority by seizing authority granted to the states and converting the bay cleanup efforts into a process that is a top-down approach with mandatory regulations. These overzealous regulations will affect everyone who lives, works, and farms in the Chesapeake Bay watershed, and the cost of complying with these requirements will be devastating during our current economic downturn, resulting in many billions of dollars in economic losses to states, cities, and towns, farms, and other businesses, large and small. The EPA's approach is far from the best approach to restore the Chesapeake Bay. I believe that each individual state and the localities in each state know better how to manage a state's water quality goals than the bureaucrats at the EPA. I'm sure that there are some who wonder why what is happening in the Chesapeake Bay watershed is important to their district. While EPA's unprecedented actions are starting in the Chesapeake Bay, they are coming to a watershed in your region of the country, in your state. The EPA has stated in the document, A Coming Together for Clean Water, EPA's strategy for achieving clean water, that, quote, the EPA will use the Chesapeake Bay as a demonstration for strengthening total maximum daily load pollution reduction plans. The Chesapeake Bay watershed will be a model for watershed protection in other parts of the country. It's important that we in Congress tell the EPA to slow down. The EPA does not have the authority to micromanage states' water quality goals, and we must stop their power grab.
I want to be clear, we all agree more must be done to restore the Bay, and this is not meant to cut off good work that is happening in the Bay watershed. We have made substantial investments to clean up the Bay. This amendment will not stop work that is going on in the states or the voluntary programs managed by federal agencies that work with those on the ground to restore water quality. What this amendment will do is stop the EPA's regulatory power grab. It will stop the EPA from taking over responsibilities that have traditionally been left to the states. I would be happy to yield to the gentleman.
I want to thank the gentleman for bringing this amendment forward. I think it's very worthwhile, and I support him, and I appreciate him bringing the amendment forward.
I thank the gentleman. I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Virginia reserves the balance of his time. The gentleman from Virginia claimed time in opposition to the amendment.
I do, Mr. Chairman. I rise in opposition
for 5 minutes.
to this extreme amendment. 6 weeks ago, the Environmental Protection Agency, 6 states, including Mr. Goodlatte's own state of Virginia and the District of Columbia, ended years of stalling and released detailed plans to reduce Chesapeake Bay pollution to meet minimal water quality standards over the next 15 years. Meeting those science-based and legally required goals is going to require a significant and sometimes costly effort from all the citizens, towns, cities, and states that are part of the Chesapeake Bay watershed. This year's Chesapeake Bay Foundation State of the Bay report suggests that recent pollution-cutting measures are in fact beginning to show results. We've seen increased crab and oyster populations and an increase in underwater grasses. The Bay is coming back to life. The agreed-upon, negotiated, detailed, multi-state plans have the potential to finally restore the Chesapeake Bay if everyone does his part. The amendment, though, would block any federal agency's ability to work with the states in meeting pollution reduction targets for the entire Chesapeake Bay watershed. And if we don't meet this obligation, the states, farmers, municipalities, and businesses in all the states will be economically harmed. And if this amendment were to pass, it would not relieve the farms, businesses, and municipalities from their requirements in the court-ordered settlement, but it would turn the pollution limits into an unfunded mandate, since it would also block any federal agency from providing technical and federal assistance to bring farms, businesses, and municipalities into compliance with pollution reduction goals. Clearly, this amendment is designed to and will unravel the current effort to finally put a limit on nutrient and sediment pollution in the Chesapeake Bay. Agriculture accounts for 42% of today's nitrogen, 46% of today's phosphorus, and 72% of the sediment entering the Chesapeake Bay. This amendment would break up the existing federal, state, local, and private partnership by prohibiting any federal financial assistance to farmers, municipalities, and businesses that are working to improve the Chesapeake Bay watershed. It had set aside the tremendous progress this Congress has made in restoring the Bay. Pollution of the Chesapeake Bay also is a jobs killer for the citizens in its watershed. If this amendment passes, it will ultimately result in the loss of thousands of fishing, crabbing, and tourism jobs. The fact is, Mr. Chairman, now is not the time to retreat on our commitment to restore this great estuary, nor to kill the thousands of jobs that the Bay's survival depends upon. And so I urge my colleagues to reject this amendment and reserve the balance of my time, Mr. Chairman.
Of his time. Gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Goodlatte.
Mr. Chairman, it's my pleasure to yield to the chairman of the Conservation Subcommittee, the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Thompson, for 1 minute.
Gentleman from Pennsylvania is recognized for 1 minute.
Well, I thank the good man, the gentleman from Virginia. I rise in strong support of the gentleman from Virginia's amendment. The total maximum daily load is a mandatory diet to restrict nutrient and sediment runoff from point and non-point sources in the Chesapeake Bay watershed. EPA's proposed regulations will have a devastating economic impact on my constituents and throughout Pennsylvania. Unquestionably, the Bay is in need and truly worthy of our support. But this is just one more example of how EPA is trying to bypass congressional authority through backdoor regulations and unfunded mandates. EPA has based the Chesapeake Bay TMDLs on its own model, even though it is inconsistent with the models prepared by the Department of Agriculture. The head of the USDA's Natural Resources Conservation Service has recently gone so far as to say the EPA's data on conservation practice is erroneous. Agriculture is not receiving the credit it deserves towards reducing nutrient and sediment runoff. Yet EPA is forcing the Bay states to move forward on unreasonable mandates using the agency's flawed Bay model. EPA will not even perform an economic analysis of the TMDL when the proposed unquestionability will have severe economic impacts on our nation's farmers and rural communities. And I urge my colleagues to support this amendment and vote in its favor. And thank you.
Gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from Virginia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. May I ask how much time we have, Mr. Chairman?
Gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Moran, has 2.5 minutes, and the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Goodlatte, has 1.5 minutes.
At this point, Mr. Chairman, I would yield to Mr. Scott for a unanimous consent request.
Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I ask unanimous consent to revise and extend remarks in opposition to this amendment.
Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. Chairman, I'll yield 2 minutes to the very distinguished gentleman from Maryland, Mr. Van Hollen.
Gentleman from Maryland is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Chesapeake Bay is a natural and national treasure. It's the largest estuary in the United States of America, and the health of the Chesapeake Bay is under constant assault from all sources of pollution: urban runoff, farm runoff, stormwater runoff. And we've been working for years and years, in fact decades, to try and clean up the bay. And it's been like running in place, because every time we take action, more pollution flows into the bay. And that's why, under the Obama administration, they've taken important action to try and finally get ahead of the curve and restore the health of the bay. And Will Baker, who's the president of the Chesapeake Bay Foundation, described the approach of the Obama administration as something that may well represent the bay's best and last chance for restoration. As Mr. Moran pointed out, if we don't do that, the watermen, the sports fishermen, and the tourist industry will be badly hurt. Now, I'm not sure that the gentleman from Virginia who introduced this amendment recognizes the impact it might have on farmers, because what it does is says none of the funds in this act, including EPA and Agriculture Department, may be used for a number of purposes, including watershed implementation plans for the Chesapeake Bay watershed. Now, we spoke to USDA's general counsel. Their office told us that this could well deprive farmers of some of their valuable agricultural conservation funds. Last I checked, Maryland received in fiscal year 2009 $28 million, and the state of Virginia, the farmers in Virginia, received about $16 million to help them with their conservation efforts, because as good stewards of the land, they have been part of the team effort to protect the Chesapeake Bay. And as Mr. Moran said, if you take these funds away, you're denying them some of the tools that they've effectively used. So this won't only hurt the watermen and the sports fishermen, it's also going to hurt the farmers, and collectively it's going to hurt the largest estuary in the United States. Let's work to save the bay, not undermine its health. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Time of the gentleman has expired.
If the gentleman would like to, who has the right to conclude, Mr. Chairman?
The gentleman from Virginia, well, Mr. Moran, has the right to close.
Which gentleman from Virginia?
The gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Moran.
The right to close. Then I will reserve.
Mr. Chairman, I yield myself the balance of the time to make 2 points. First of all, the gentleman from Virginia is quite correct. The Chesapeake Bay is getting healthier, and that's a very, very good thing, all of which is happening as a result of the voluntary, incentivized, state-controlled regulation of this process. None of it has occurred under this TMDL provision that the gentleman from Maryland referred to, because of the fact that it is only now being imposed on farmers, and they are very concerned about it, as are small cities and towns, as are home builders and others. This will have a devastating economic impact on the entire Bay region, small cities and large included. Second point, none of the funds made available in this act to EPA may be used to develop, promulgate. That's the... Is that right? We checked with the Department of Agriculture. We checked with Council on the Agriculture Committee, and they agree that this restricts only those purposes described in the legislation related to the implementation of this language related to what the EPA is trying to do with their TMDL. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Moran.
Mr. Chairman, this is very important. We talked to the General Counsel at the Department of Agriculture. that Mr. Goodlatte, as fine a person as he is wrong on this. His amendment says none of the funds. Maybe he intended to say EPA. He didn't. And that means that the farmers, the agribusiness throughout the Chesapeake Bay watershed would lose about $100 million in conservation efforts if this amendment was to be approved. The fact is, Mr. Chairman, that miles of the Chesapeake Bay have died, and largely because the fertilizer that washes into that bay, the vegetation at the bottom, feeds on that nitrogen and all. It grows like it's on steroids, and when it decomposes, it sucks up all the oxygen. And as a result, nothing can live in the Chesapeake Bay. No crabs, no oysters, no fish,
Time
nothing.
of the gentleman
it's
has
dead.
expired.
This amendment needs to be defeated. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All time has expired. The questions on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Goodlatte. Those in favor signify so by saying aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The ayes have it.
That, Mr. Chairman, we
gentleman from Virginia,
Mr.
Mr. Moran.
Obviously.
Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Virginia will be postponed. Purposes the gentleman from Utah seek recognition.
The desk, amendment number 497.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 497, printed in the congressional record, offered by Mr. Matheson of Utah.
Pursuant to the order of the House of February 17, 2011, the gentleman from Utah, Mr. Matheson, and a member opposed each will control 5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Utah.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This amendment would cut funding in the CR other than for the Department of Defense and the U.S. Postal Service, other than those two, by $280 million. Now, $280 million is the amount of money that would be saved if federal civilian agencies, except DOD and the Postal Service, were to reduce their vehicle fleet budgets by 20%. If adopted, it is my intention that these federal agencies determine where to cut their portion of the $280 million in cuts specifically towards finding savings in their vehicle fleet budgets. This is a bipartisan idea supported by the chairs of the National Commission on Fiscal Responsibility and Reform. I encourage my colleagues to support this amendment, and I'd like to yield to my colleague from California, Mr. Royce.
I appreciate the gentleman for yielding. The Bipartisan Deficit Reduction Commission has looked at the work of the GAO on this issue. The GAO has tried to get governmental agencies to look at reducing their vehicular fleet. They have put out studies, and one of the interesting examples was where the GAO found automobiles in a parking lot that had not even been used for 3 years that had been purchased. Their point is this: with 650,000 vehicles that the government uses now, there is a way to put in place, if you followed the recommendations of the GAO, a way to reduce that fleet and save money. And the General Accounting Office has said that the government agencies are badly managing their vehicles. Now, we know that with one government agency, the Department of Energy, that decided to put in place these recommendations, they reduced their fleet. In their budget going forward, they can reduce their fleet by 35%. What we're saying with this amendment is let's follow the recommendation of the GAO. The Heritage Foundation endorses this. It certainly was supported by the Bipartisan Deficit Reduction Commission. We've got a deficit of $1.5 trillion and growing. This is a way to shut it down in a way that has been recommended to us by the GAO to move forward, and so we support this amendment, this bipartisan amendment. I yield back.
I'll reserve the balance.
Gentleman from Utah reserves. Who seeks time in opposition to the amendment? The gentleman from Kentucky?
I am opposed to the amendment.
The gentleman's recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, there the gentleman goes again. He's attempting to cut without specifying where the cuts come from. There's no tough choices identified in the amendment. All it says is just to reduce the appropriations for by $280 million, exempting DOD and Postal Service. But across-the-board cuts is a way for us to escape responsibility for making choices that people elected us to do. And this amendment does not specify where the cuts come from or who's to make the cuts. I guess he would leave it up to the bureaucrats to decide where to cut, but that's what we elected we were elected to do, Mr. Chairman, and so I have to oppose the amendment. I sympathize with the desire to cut more spending, but I want it done in a judicious and specific way, and so I have to oppose the amendment and reserve.
The gentleman reserves his time. Gentleman from Utah.
Appreciate the comments of my colleague from Kentucky about the challenges with the cross-the-board cuts. I feel like I was elected to come up with suggestions. If I could draft an amendment that would be ruled in order, I would specifically say it should be about the spending cuts, but I can't legislate on an appropriations bill. And so I would hope that as we look at this amendment, we understand that people read the record of this conversation. It was the intent of Congress when it looked at this amendment that agencies are supposed to reduce their vehicle purchases by 20%. That is the best that Mr. Royce and I can do under the rules of the House. We're trying to offer a specific opportunity to cut spending. We think we've identified it well during this discussion. I urge my colleagues to support it, and I'll yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Kentucky.
Yield back.
Gentleman yields back. All times expired. The questions on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Utah. Those in favor signify so by saying aye. Those opposed, no. The opinion of the chair, the noes have it. The noes have it, and the amendment's not agreed to. For what purpose does the gentleman from Colorado seek recognition?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To offer an amendment to pre-printed designated as number 79.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 79, printed in the congressional record, offered by Mr. Gardner of Colorado.
Pursuant to the order of the House of February 17, 2011, the gentleman from Colorado, Mr. Gardner, and a member opposed each will control 5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Colorado.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This amendment simply prevents the Department of Health and Human Services from implementing the exchange as created under Obamacare. The exchange does not allow the American people to choose the benefits in their health plans. Instead, it will force the American people into a one-size-fits-all program where government bureaucrats limit their health insurance options. The government will control which plans are allowed to be offered in each state, will control which companies will be allowed to sell health insurance plans in each state, and will control the benefits contained in those health insurance plans. Exchanges as they are being designed will only serve to further strain cash-strapped states by forcing them to use their employees or hire new employees to create and run them. I urge the adoption of Amendment 79. Recently, several Republican governors sent a letter to the Secretary of Sebelius criticizing the exchange and asking her to provide states with complete flexibility in operating the exchange, most importantly, the freedom to decide which licensed insurers are permitted to offer their products. I ask that this letter be submitted to the record and urge the adoption of Amendment 79.
Without objection, the request to have the letter submitted will be handled in the committee of the House. For what purpose the gentlelady from
I rise to claim time in opposition.
Connecticut rise? Gentlelady is recognized.
I yield myself a minute and a half. I rise in opposition to this amendment. Defunding the health insurance exchanges that we created in the Affordable Care Act will hurt small businesses, which are the driving force of our economy. It destroys jobs, takes away consumer choice, and increases the deficit. By gaining access to the exchanges, small businesses will prosper from what large employers have enjoyed for years: large group rates, lower administrative costs, and greater transparency. The exchanges also give small businesses and their employees access to a fuller range of plans. They give families across America access to the information that they need in order to be able to buy the best plan at a competitive price that suits their needs. The exchanges create a competitive marketplace for health insurance so that small businesses and middle-class families across America can benefit from lower prices and more choices. This is basic free market principles is at work. One would think the majority would support any attempt to bring competition to health care, but instead they are carrying the water for big insurance companies who do not want competition. They want to preserve their monopolies. They want a captive market, forced to pay whatever exorbitant rates they feel like charging. That will not bring down health care costs or cut the deficit. The health insurance exchanges help slow the surging cost of health care by introducing competition into the marketplace, and I urge my colleagues to oppose this amendment, which will threaten our economy, harm our small businesses, and will destroy jobs. And I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentlelady reserves. The gentleman from Colorado.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Georgia.
The gentleman from Georgia is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate the gentleman from Colorado's leadership on this. Have you noticed a common theme, Mr. Chairman?
It's that these folks want the government to be in charge of our health care. These folks over here want patients to be in charge of our health care. And it kind of runs throughout all of the issues as they relate to health care. Now, the exchanges may seem like a great idea, but there's a big problem with the way that they're set up. They don't work. You don't have to believe us. Goodness gracious. 21 governors have sent a letter to Secretary Sebelius, and what did they say? They need complete flexibility on operating so that they have the freedom to decide which insurers offer the products in their state. If that weren't true, it would mean that the federal government's offering it. What they're asking for waiving the costly mandates, which means, Mr. Chairman, that the mandates are crushing the states across this great land. And they've asked for waiving the provisions that discriminate against all sorts of plans. Remember, Mr. Chairman, that you won't be able to keep what you like. You won't be able to keep what you like. So this is pretty simple. These folks want the government to be in charge of our health care. These folks want patients to be in charge of our health care. We come down on the side of patients. Support the amendment. Yield back.
Thank you, Mr.
Gentleman from Colorado.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And again, I would simply urge adoption of the amendment to defund the exchanges. As a former state legislator, the legislators I have talked to in Colorado around the country all urge the same thing that I have spoken to. Defund the exchanges, defund this bill. Let's put real solutions in place that will actually decrease the cost of care, increase the quality of care, and we can begin that process tonight. Reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. The gentlelady from Connecticut.
I'd like to yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Pallone.
Gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Pallone, is recognized for 2 minutes.
I've got 2.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, the question here is, whose side are you on? The only people that I talk to who are against the exchanges are the big insurance companies and their representatives, because they're the only ones that stand to gain by keeping the status quo and not have the exchanges. The little guy, the consumer, wants the exchange. Why? Because he can get affordable coverage, because he can get a good benefit package, because there's transparency, because he can find out what's being offered and how much it costs him. And the insurance companies don't want any of that because they want to continue with business as usual, keep raising rates. Now, we all know how it works. The large employers, they can go out and get group coverage, but if you're an individual or you're a small business, it's very hard to do that. And that's why we set up the exchanges, because basically it's like a larger insurance pool. And now the small business, the individual, can go on the exchange, they can find out what's going on, they can see what the rates are, and there's competition. As the gentlewoman from Connecticut said, the Republicans always used to be for competition. This is the marketplace. This is capitalism. This is what we're providing here. It's a choice, more choices for the little guy. That's what this is all about. And I, for the life of me, do not understand, again, why the Republicans would not want to have the exchanges, except for the same reason. They're siding with the big insurance companies. They're not worrying about the consumer and the average American. It's also the fact that we're talking about portability. Right now, if you have a job and you're afraid to go to another job and maybe a better job or something that you'd like to do because you're afraid that you're going to lose your health insurance. Well, now you don't do that. You can change your job. You can do something better. You can improve your life. You can live the American dream because now you don't have to worry about not being able to find a good, affordable insurance policy. This is another aspect of the exchanges that are really so important. Really, the exchanges are the heart of what we're trying to do, which is cover all Americans, provide access to good insurance coverage for all Americans, and make it at a reasonable cost. That is not the case now, and it will only be the case if these exchanges, as part of the larger health care reform, become law and continue to become law.
Good job.
The gentleman from Colorado.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to inquire, are there any other speakers speaking tonight from the other side on this amendment?
Yes.
The gentlewoman has time remaining.
Are there any other speakers other than the closing?
I have speakers on my side.
I reserve my time.
The gentleman from Colorado continues to reserve.
How much time is left on that?
The gentlelady from Connecticut has 1.5 minutes remaining. The gentleman from Colorado has 2.5 minutes remaining.
Does the gentleman have any speakers? Okay. I yield a minute to the a minute and a half. I'm sorry, a minute and a half to the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Andrews.
The gentleman from New Jersey is recognized for 1.5 minutes. Without objection.
I thank my friend for yielding. For 15 million Americans, this is another Friday night without a paycheck. And instead of working together to create jobs, here we are again, relitigating the health care bill. The bill we talked about last year, last month, last week, yesterday, this morning, here we are. We should be creating jobs, but here we are. Now, the exchange does three things. It says that small businesses and families and individuals can get the same purchasing power that big corporations do when they buy their health insurance. It says you can choose among private competitors, insurance companies, and see who makes the best offer to you. And it says you make the choice that you want. This should sound very familiar to the members on the other side because it's exactly what they have as members of Congress in the federal health insurance program. So, I would think that the members on both sides would want their constituents to have the same health care opportunities that they do. If you believe that's the case, then the right vote on this amendment is no. I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentlelady from Connecticut.
How much time is left? Do we have any time on
The
our
gentlelady from Connecticut has 13 seconds remaining.
Okay. Well, I can do 13 seconds too, Mr. Ween. Right. Thank you. In my 13 remaining seconds, to quote Mr. Garamendi here, what are the health insurance exchange? It's called the Federal Employees Health Benefit Program. We in the Congress have the benefit of enjoying a health care exchange where we can have our choice, pick the plan that suits our needs, get it at a competitive rate. Why do we not want to extend this to the rest of the country? It should not be just the purview of those who serve in the United States Congress.
Ladies, time has expired. The gentleman from Colorado.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I will remind my colleagues of testimony that was given before the Budget Committee, the House Budget Committee, by Mr. Foster, the Chief Actuary of Medicare, who blew a hole in the two primary promises of Obamacare. The first promise that people get to keep the health care that they have if they liked it, he said that's not going to happen. The second promise that it would lower the cost of health care, he said that's not going to happen. This is the Chief Actuary of Medicare. I didn't have the opportunity to speak on this floor when this bill came through the House of Representatives, but I do now. Because the people of Colorado spoke on November 2nd when they said enough is enough, let's get Congress doing the people's business, creating jobs, getting government out of the way, let's find real solutions for the health care bill. Solutions that will actually bring common sense reforms to lower the cost of health care, increase the quality of care, not result in 800,000 job losses, not result in promises made to the people that can't be kept. We have got to do something soon, and I hope it's voting. I urge an amendment, the adoption of this amendment.
The gentleman yields back. All time is expired. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Colorado. Those in favor say aye. Aye. And those opposed say no. No. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The amendment.
Recorded vote.
Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Colorado will be postponed. What purpose does the gentlewoman from Ohio rise?
330 and 331 be considered en bloc.
Is there objection to en bloc consideration of the amendment? Hearing none, so ordered. The clerk will designate the amendment.
En bloc amendments consisting of amendments numbered 329, 330, and 331, printed in the congressional record, offered by Ms. Kaptur of Ohio.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Kentucky rise? I reserve a point of order on the amendment. Point of order is reserved. Pursuant to the order of the House of February 17, 2011, the gentlelady from Ohio and a member opposed each will control 5 minutes, and the chair now recognizes the gentlewoman from Ohio.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. These amendments eliminate as no longer necessary the federal administrative subsidy for the Southeastern Power Administration, the Southwestern Power Administration, and the Western Area Power Administration. These massive energy subsidies amount to what I call unauthorized megamarks. These energy subsidies that began 3 decades ago to develop only the West and South now cost the rest of America billions of dollars. In fact, the Northeast, Florida, the Midwest, the Great Lakes states are heavily subsidizing the West and South. I have a map here that kind of shows the parts of America that have a federal power umbrella and those that don't. And it's really shocking to look at what the utility rates are. In Idaho, it costs residential consumers $7.98 per kilowatt hour. But guess what? In Ohio, that has no subsidy, it costs those residential consumers $11.34. In Wyoming, with power subsidies, it costs $8.79. But in Connecticut, with no subsidy, it costs those citizens $19.35 a kilowatt hour. To achieve real budget savings, we must address megamark spending, not just district-targeted earmarks, but massive megamarks. These regional federal power subsidies illustrate the problem. In fact, those subsidies over only some regions are privileges that the other regions of the country can't afford anymore. These regions have outlived their usefulness in terms of subsidy. Those regions need to compete in the free market just like the rest of our regions do. No more free rides because America can't afford it anymore. My part of America can't afford the largesse given to the energy power marketing authorities in the other regions. The Southeastern Power Administration has never been operationally self-sufficient. It has cost the taxpayers $545 million, over $500 million, since created in 1950. Similarly, the Southwestern Power Administration has never been operationally self-sufficient, costing the taxpayers over $707 million since it was created in 1944. And WAPA, the Western Power Authority, has never been operationally self-sufficient. It has cost the taxpayers over $7 billion since created in 1978. 27 years of continued appropriations to only some regions seems like plenty of time for those agencies to have business plans in place to yield self-sufficiency and compete in the real marketplace like the rest of us are expected to do. In my region of the nation, we have no federal power subsidy. Ohioans pay 11.3 cents per kilowatt hour, but Utah only pays 8.7 cents. Arkansas only pays 8.8 cents. But New York pays 18.6 cents. They have no federal power subsidy. Citizens where I live tax themselves separately and locally through local tax levies for economic development. The federal government has never helped us on our power costs. Our energy is provided through investor-owned utilities, and we have no federal cushion to depend on. And that's the reason recession causes tremendous hardships in free market regions like our own. How are federal power subsidies to just some regions fair to all our taxpayers? After 3 decades, it's time to let 3 unauthorized power marketing administrations stand on their own 2 feet and compete in the free market just like our region does. Balance our budget, cut the subsidies, cut the megamarks, cut regional favoritism that benefits the few at the expense of the many. I ask to include in the record a full state-by-state power cost analysis in the record so all Americans can know who is being subsidized and who is eking it out and trying to compete in the real marketplace, the free marketplace. I ask members here to support the Kaptur Amendment to eliminate the federal administrative subsidies for power marketing authorities. Now let me point out that some of our power marketing authorities are doing it right. Bonneville, they did it right. There's a way to do it right and a way to do it wrong, and we shouldn't reward inefficiency. We should allow these institutions to compete in the free market and not make the other parts of America that are burdened by high unemployment and high power costs to be giving favored treatment to other parts of the country that are not carrying their own load forward. So again, take a look at the privileged parts of America and then ask yourself who's paying for it. It's pretty clear what's going on here. The Southeastern Power Marketing Administration was budgeted to be zero funded in the President's FY11 budget. The amendment would allow this 2010 funding to go to zero. Under the continuing resolution, they will continue to be funded at their 2010 levels in spite of being eliminated in the budget. So, you know, there's a lot of bookkeeping going on here that doesn't treat all parts of America fairly. I ask my colleagues to do what we've had to do.
The lady's time has
compete
expired.
In the real marketplace. I yield back my remaining time.
The lady's remarks will be covered under general leave. The gentleman from Kentucky.
Mr. Chairman, the amendment proposes a net increase in budget authority in the bill. The amendment is not in order under Section 3J3 of House Resolution 5, 112th Congress, which states, "It shall not be in order to consider an amendment to a general appropriations bill proposing a net increase in budget authority in the bill unless considered en bloc with another amendment or amendments proposing an equal or greater decrease in such budget authority pursuant to Clause 2F of Rule 21. The amendment proposes a net increase in budget authority in the bill in violation of such section. I ask for ruling."
The gentleman from Kentucky makes a point of order that the amendments offered en bloc by the gentlewoman from Ohio violate Section 3J3 of House Resolution 5. Does any member wish to be heard on the point of order? Nope. The gentlelady from Ohio is recognized.
I thank the chairman very much for yielding. Only in Washington would they say that if you ask organizations to compete in the free market, it costs more money to the federal government. Only in Washington would that kind of bookkeeping exist. So I am troubled by the point of order, but I would just say that I thank the gentleman for expressing his point of view. This will not be the last time we hear about power marketing authorities and their inability to compete in the private marketplace this year. I yield back my remaining time, Mr. Chairman, and thank you.
The chair is prepared to rule on the point of order. Section 3J3 establishes a point of order against an amendment proposing a net increase in budget authority in the pending bill. The chair has been persuasively guided by an estimate from the chair of the Committee on the Budget that the amendments propose a net increase in budget authority in the bill. Therefore, the point of order is sustained. The amendments are not in order. For what purpose is the gentleman from New York rise?
I have an amendment at the desk, Amendment 126.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 126, printed in the congressional record, offered by Mr. Wiener of New York.
Pursuant to the order of the House of February 17, 2011, the gentleman from New York, Mr. Wiener, and a member opposed would each control 5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from New York.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the great relief, I'm sure of all those assembled, I don't intend to take the full 5 minutes because I think the amendment. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Please contain your enthusiasm. The amendment I propose is one that I think that both sides of the aisle will rally around. It's very simple. It limits any aid in this bill going to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Why we would be providing any aid to Saudi Arabia at all has been an eternal mystery to me, given their propensity to exporting terrorism, given that they had exported 15 of the 19 homicide bombers on September 11th, given that just in December when the WikiLeaks came out, it was learned in a quote from the Secretary of State has been an ongoing challenge to persuade Saudi officials to treat terrorist funding as an important priority. Given that the Saudis have textbooks that say things like this in them, this is what they teach to their children. The prophet said the hour of judgment will not come until Muslims fight the Jews and kill them, or Muslim will serve unto God, the Jew is behind me, come and kill them. They have textbooks that also lash out at Christians. And it's also important to note that in this House, year after year, we've eliminated aid to the Saudis only to have it come back. As you see on this chart, 2005, it was actually defeated that year, but every subsequent year, this House voted to ban aid to Saudi Arabia, and it keeps rising back up like a Shakespearean specter. This language strikes the presidential waiver, says no more aid to Saudi Arabia. I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves for the gentlewoman from Texas is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in opposition to this amendment. The underlying FY10 bill...
The gentlewoman is recognized for 5 minutes.
I'm sorry. The underlying FY10 bill already prohibits assistance to Saudi Arabia unless the Secretary of State determines that it is in our U.S. national interest. Maintaining a relationship with Saudi Arabia is critical to our national security, and I'm concerned this amendment could jeopardize that relationship. Our two countries enjoy robust counterterrorism intelligence sharing. Saudi-U.S. collaboration helped thwart the package bomb from Yemen. Saudi Arabia is a critical strategic ally with whom we share mutual enemies and mutual threats. I believe this amendment goes too far, and I urge a no vote, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentlewoman yields back. The gentleman from New York.
I simply say, with the greatest respect to Madam Chair, that we have spoken in this body repeatedly. The Saudis don't need our money. They got plenty of their own money. It's the money that they use when they jack up gas prices and give us no help in trying to deal with them. It's the money that they use to export terrorism. They don't need any of our money. I understand there's a presidential waiver. This may come as a surprise that my friends now want to give the President that authority to override Congress. I think we should take it away, say no way to Saudi Arabia. I ask for a yes vote and yield back the balance of my time.
All time has expired and has been yielded back. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from New York. Those in favor say aye. Aye. And those opposed say no. No. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The amendment is agreed to. For what purpose does the gentleman from New York rise?
Is on a roll, so he asks for Wiener Amendment 101.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 101, printed in the congressional record, offered by Mr. Wiener of New York.
Pursuant to the order of the House of February 17, 2011, the gentleman from New York, Mr. Wiener, and a member opposed will each control 5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from New York.
Thank you. Once again, I have no intention of taking the full measure of my time. This is an amendment that has been discussed on this floor many times. Unfortunately, it keeps coming back. We provide subsidies, believe it or not.
Support the amendment.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. I'm going to be very brief. Just let me explain. This is an amendment that now I'm from. I would say to the ranking member, I'm from Queens. I'm from New York City, so I thought mohair was a guy named Mo who just had long hair. But I now know that it is a subsidy that dates back to World War I, when our uniforms were made with mohair, and there was a strategic imperative to make sure we had enough. We provide a subsidy that has not been used in military uniforms for now about 55 years. Congressman Chaffetz and I have been agitating to try to eliminate this earmark. It's not an earmark, a subsidy. There's still $1 million of funding going to about 12 farmers. No goats lost anything for the purpose of this picture. This is what a mohair looks like. I would urge my colleague to end this wasteful subsidy, and I reserve the balance of my. And I yield to the chairman of the subcommittee.
I have to ask my friend from New York if sheep are carnivorous. Do they bite human beings? That's my question.
Well, first of all, I would say to the...
I understand that they can be carnivorous. That's what my question is to my friend.
Reclaiming my time. First of all, show some respect. They're goats. Second of all, and if you're referring to a press conference that went awry that I had where I perhaps might have been bitten by a goat, I will say this. I will say I believe that there's nothing wrong with these animals. We want them to have as much hair as they need, and if you want to give them a haircut, you should do it with your own money. It shouldn't be on the taxpayer's dime. So I urge a yes vote on the Wiener amendment.
So there's not a feed subsidy for them. I just want to make sure, Mr. Speaker, because I understand there was an incident. We do support the amendment.
Thank you. And I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back the balance of his time. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from New York. Those in favor say aye, and those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The amendment is agreed to. For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas rise?
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 151, printed in the congressional record, offered by Mr. Neugebauer of Texas.
Pursuant to the order of the House of February 17, 2011, the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Neugebauer, and a member opposed, each will control 5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Texas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, this